Okay, got it. So good evening, everyone. It's April 21st. This is Southeast Uplift Line Use Transportation meeting. We're meeting virtually tonight to discuss the upcoming East Portland TIF districts and the community leadership committees that are recruiting at present. So if you all could just do a quick introduction, and we have a couple minutes, and this is a really fun icebreaker I heard, if you don't mind. Maybe share a fact or interest about yourself. Use that starts with the first letter of your name. So I was kind of struggling with this one myself, how to do this. But Machi Williams, Southeast Uplift. I was thinking about M. And quickest thing I could come up with was Mr. Holland's Opus and that closing scene where he's getting on the bus. That's a diner up in St. John's, St. Patty's Diner. I used to go there as a teenager to play Magic the Gathering. And so where that scene was filmed, Mr. Holland's Opus and Magic the Gathering. That's my quick fact.
Oh my God, how are we supposed to top that?
Well, I know, it's not fair, right? 2 M's.
So it's a fun fact, starting with
the first letter of your name.
First name.
Or an interest, if you can't think of a fun fact.
Oh my gosh.
I know, it makes you think, doesn't it?
Do me last.
All right, we'll come back to you, Lisa. Terry, you're unmuted. Do you want to say a quick hello and do the icebreaker?
Yeah, my name's Terry Parker. I'm the representative for Rose City Park. It's an easy one for me because my first name is Terry and my interest is in transportation. I'm kind of a transportation guy. I collect toy trains and toy trucks and cars, and I'm trying to think of the guy that I met, that the former celebrity that I met that collected him, and I can't think of his name. I apologize for that. I was gonna go run real quick because I got his autograph and it's hanging on the wall. But anyway, that's kind of where I'm at. I was at a show this weekend. It's called the Mega Sale over in Vancouver, and I was selling transportation toys.
Very cool. I always remember that. It's one of the things you shared, Terry and trains. Very cool. Jenny. We could come back to you. I guess Jacob, can you say a quick hello?
Yeah, I'm in a noisy room, so I'm just gonna walk out a little bit. But I don't know. I would say my name's Jacob, and I like to join things. I join a lot of boards and a lot of groups.
Very true. That's awesome. Thank you. Susan, hi.
Hi. You're not looking at me because I'm eating dinner, and I don't think you want to watch me eat dinner. I'm Susan Novak. I live in Sunnyside. I worked for a long time as an international development consultant, but before that I was an urban and regional planner in Montreal. So I have professional and personal interests.
Very cool. Glad you can make it out tonight.
Can I just say one more thing?
Yeah, Terry, go for it.
The celebrity I met was Jonathan Winters, and he collected toy motorcycles at one time. I met him at a show in 2003 out at the Expo Center, and we had about a 10-minute conversation, just one-on-one. It was fantastic.
Oh, that's precious.
Yeah.
Good for you.
We're
Awesome.
talking about reproduction toys, believe it or not.
He was amazing.
You bet. And he was just like he is in the movies, with that kind of that little hee laugh. That's the way he talked.
Nice. Good for you.
Sorry to bud back in, but I couldn't.
That's a great memory. No, that's a great memory. Thank you for.
Yeah, thanks for sharing. I guess Bill.
Hello, this is Bill Cunningham. I'm with the City of Portland Bureau of Planning and Sustainability. I'm the Southeast District Planner. So trying to keep in touch with all that's happening. And in terms of a bee thing, I play the bagpipes, or especially when I was a youngster. So there we are.
Very cool
That's
fact.
awesome. I love the bagpipes.
It's awesome. Thanks for sharing.
Sure.
Misha.
Good evening, all. Misha Jones. I've been trying to think of something that I'm interested in or of interest with M. What comes to mind automatically is just housing. That's just my realm. So I would say probably multifamily housing, building and developing more multifamily housing to meet need, both deeply affordable up to 120% AMI or market rate conventional housing opportunities as well. I will pass it to Raul.
Thanks, Misha. Raul Priscilla Mendez here. Their pronouns are both fine. I'm on the policy team here at the Portland Housing Bureau. Thanks for having us. And the thing that I do that starts with the letter R is I actually like to row a lot, and I haven't gotten out on the river very much because I don't have a kayak. I've usually gone with friends, but I do have a rowing machine that I like to use a lot. So I am in the garage with the rowing machine regularly. So I love it.
Yeah, especially really on the Willamette. Such a great fun thing to do in kayaks. Lisa, if you had time to think about
Okay.
an icebreaker.
Yeah, I guess. Lisa Maddox, I'm the land use representative for the North Tabor Neighborhood Association. And with the L, I like to travel to Palm Springs and Arizona, where several of my friends live. So I like to go there at least 2 or 3 times a year.
Well done. Find that L connection. That's awesome.
Thanks.
Can you hear me okay now?
Oh, yeah.
This is Jenny. Hi.
Hey, Jenny.
I couldn't turn my mic on before. Let me get mine out of the way. I'm Jenny Breed. I live in North Tabor. I'm also pretty recently a member of the City Club of Portland's Committee for Built Environment Issues. So that's something I've been getting more and more excited to be a part of lately. As far as something with my name, the only thing I can think of is that I actually have a hobby that I've been doing for years of carving rubber stamps. It's kind of similar to lino cut carving or woodblock carving. And at Halloween time, I use those skills to carve super elaborate jack-o'-lanterns.
Very cool. You'll have to bring some by sometime. Love
Yeah.
to see those. Then North Tabor Board, I don't know if we're just doing introductions real quick before we dive into presentations. If that's not already someone here, if you want to say hello. And if not, that's okay too.
I'm trying to figure out the mobile device here, but this is Ross Heiner from the North Tabor neighborhood.
Oh, and we were just doing an icebreaker. If you have an interest or hobby using the first letter of your name, share that if you'd like to. You can say pass too if that is too short notice.
Really on the spot, but I'll go with running.
Running, awesome. Okay, before we go into our presentation, I wanted to just share a few events coming up. We have these on our website. So there it is. If you go there, the Neighborhood Association board presidents are invited to a roundtable happening very soon. But we'll have our next budget town hall with the District 3 city councilors on Monday, April 28th. And we have a few trainings for our nonprofits about what every nonprofit board member should know next week. And just an overview of the Portland neighborhood system. And then finally, well, not finally, but May 10th, we'll have another budget town hall with District 3 city councilors. And on May 12th, we'll finally share what the community survey responses were from you all. We had over 4,000 open-ended responses, took a lot of data cleaning and refining to make it presentable and digestible. But that's the big unveil of the survey results will be May 12th. So if you go to that website, you can register for these to get a reminder sent to your inbox, and hope to see you there. Okay, without further ado, I'll pass over to the Portland Housing Bureau to give us an update on these Portland TIFs.
There we go. I'm on mute again. Can you hear me?
Yeah, hear you great.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. So, Machu, are you running the slides or is that Raul?
That's me. Yeah. So
Okay,
just say next
perfect.
slide.
Awesome.
And
all right.
could you let us know if you would like people just to jump in if they have a question, or should they write it down and save it towards the end?
Yeah.
What do you prefer?
Say let's go ahead and save the questions towards the end. And yeah.
Okay, sounds good.
Perfect. All right. So to get started, Raul, can you go to the next slide, please? Perfect. All right. So for tonight, we're gonna do welcomes. We just kind of did a little brief welcome and an icebreaker, but we'll introduce ourselves, let you know a little bit more about the work that we're doing. We'll do a TIF refresher. We'll look back. So we'll discuss like district plans, dollars, and governance. And then looking ahead, what is the action plan, or what is an action plan? And then finally, opportunities to stay engaged. So as a way of an introduction, my name is Misha. I use she, her pronouns with the Portland Housing Bureau. I am on the policy team with Raul. I will be the Bureau liaison for 82nd Avenue, and we will co-lead the 3 Central City TIF districts. And then Raul, if you want to introduce yourself.
Yeah, thanks, Misha. For those of you who showed up a little bit late, again, my name is Raul Priscilla Mendez. He, they pronouns. I'm on the policy staff, a team here at the Portland Housing Bureau, and my title is actually East Portland Policy Coordinator. So my focus is on East Portland, east of 205 specifically, but do work all around the city. And like Misha said, we're working on TIF, and sort of I'll be the liaisons to the space district, which we'll talk about here in a little bit, and the East 205 district, as well as some support with the Central City districts.
Thank you, Raul. All right, and Lisa, I see you have a question in the chat that will be answered on our next slide. Next slide, Raul, please. All right, so what is tax increment financing, TIF? So tax increment financing is a long-term source of funding that can be invested into community priorities for physical improvements. It is not a new or increased tax. And then funding for TIF districts comes from the growth in property taxes for the defined TIF district. So an analogy that I like to use to help me to understand like what TIF is, you know, if you think about having a home, and let's say the assessed, you know, tax value is $1,000 annually, we know historically those taxes are going to rise. And when you're in a tax district, we're freezing, or the taxes, the assessed value is getting frozen at that $1,000 mark. And then any increase over that is basically getting siphoned into a separate pot. And then that money is being distributed back into the TIF district for things like economic development, infrastructure, affordable housing. And as far as the allocation, of the TIF district funds. 45% of TIF funds in a district will go to affordable housing priorities and community interest, and then 55% will be economic development and infrastructure. And then I will go ahead and go to the next slide, Raul. And so where can TIF be invested? TIF funds from TIF, the TIF district can only be invested within the TIF boundaries. So it's not possible to move TIF funds around from one district to another district. Any of the revenues generated for that TIF district must be spent within that TIF district until it expires. And these TIF districts are in place for 30 years. And then I will go ahead and pass it over to Raul for the next couple slides.
Thanks, Misha. Sorry, I was trying to get unmuted. And so Misha did a great job doing an overview over the what TIF is and sort of the way TIF investment works within districts. Another key thing that is important to remember is that there's a limit to the size of the percentage of the city that can be in a TIF district at a given time, and that limit is written in state law. And so we have just proposed and approved 6 new TIF districts, 3 in the East Portland area and 3 in the Central City. So the 82nd Avenue TIF district, I believe, goes up to right before Sandy and all the way down to Clackamas on 82nd. And then it has some leeway on the side here where it goes into different regions. These districts were developed by steering committee members and working group members. So folks who volunteered their time, community members, folks from business associations, neighborhood associations, from community-based organizations who kind of sat together and hammered out where things are opportunity areas, where things make sense, where the border should go, et cetera, et cetera. And so all of these sort of little like lines that you see going in different directions, those were all the product of very long discussions among those groups of folks who had some conversations about like opportunities and things like that. And I believe we might actually have a working group member on the call here, if I'm not mistaken, but I'll pass it to them if there's a relevant question about that. So moving on, those same groups of folks, so the working group members were developing a series of goals, largely, each district has their own set of goals, but a lot of them are very, very much overlapping. East of 82nd, so 82nd and east of 82nd, there's lots of concerns, as folks on this call are more than well aware, about transportation safety, about pedestrian crossings, about accidents on the street, lights, sidewalks, things of that nature. There's a lot of concerns about the types of businesses that can sort of thrive and to be developed in the area. And there's also just a concern about displacement through putting in a bunch of investment without having sort of the support of affordable housing coming in at the same time. So I won't read all of these out to you all, but there was a long conversation that happened within these working groups to define priority communities. Those include lots of different types of marginalized identities, but low-income folks, elderly, people of color, people with disabilities. The list goes on. So there's a list of folks. This is all like in the district approved plan, which we'd be happy to share if folks are interested. But the idea being that the way these investments would go out would be benefiting those communities first. So Oh, there it is. So I skipped ahead. So we have, again, a lengthy definition, and this was defined by the working group members. I think each district actually has like a little bit different language around this, but it's all very similar. And so folks just really spent a lot of thoughtful time kind of hammering this out. And so there's, along with defining the district boundaries and the priority communities and the priority investment areas, there's a number of different implementation principles that the working group members came up with, including, making sure that new construction that happens in the district, there's some very clear consequences that are analyzed before things start happening, related to climate, related to gentrification, related to community benefits. Who is getting hired to work on those improvements? Do they live in the district? Ideally, what sort of investments are happening and what benefits are coming with those investments? And I think Misha maybe mentioned this, but it might be worth reminding that TIF investment goes specifically to what's called sticks and bricks. So physical improvements, so not a childcare center, but not the childcare services, if that is an easy way to sort of envision that. That being said, there's lots of opportunities to sort of build workforce development centers, removing barriers to folks getting into small business development, business incubators, that sort of thing. And those programs become more attractive to invest in through third parties or other programs in the city if there's sort of existing buildings and infrastructure. So like it would make it easier in theory sort of to get that stuff into the area if you have resources to build it. Okay. So like I mentioned earlier about the sticks and bricks, there are very specific priorities that were developed, and I'll go into the breakdown here in a little bit, but the Misha mentioned the 45% for affordable housing and the 55% for economic development and infrastructure. There was some very lengthy conversations about lessons learned from other TIF districts, both intentional sort of racialized displacement historically in Black neighborhoods in North Portland through urban renewal, and then sort of unintentional displacement that happened, or less intentional, I should say, displacement that happened with the expansion of the Max line. The concerns being that if you invest a lot of money into infrastructure without sort of building up the pillars of affordable housing and economic development, you risk having people's property or rents or livability become untenable in terms of price and get priced out and get kicked out of their neighborhood they've lived in for a long time. And so the idea being, we invest heavily into affordable housing, we invest heavily into these development opportunities for folks to get better paying jobs, middle income housing, have improvements to the area that makes it more attractive for businesses to come in. And then, you're building kind of this support ecosystem together. We heard a lot from folks, not just at 82nd, but in other districts that, infrastructure is a really, really important part of this puzzle. And we know that there are some resources that are coming to 82nd Avenue, federal resources, as well as I believe state resources, if I'm not mistaken. But I mean, we want to be mindful that, there is still a pot of money in the event that an affordable housing building or a new business incubator needs like sidewalks built or something like that, right? Like not limiting it to, not restricting it, so to speak. So in this year-long community engagement that happened around the different districts, folks really kind of were very vocal about the things that they wanted to see. Specifically in 82nd, folks were talking about, having sidewalks and 24-hour vibrance in the 82nd area just to be able to sort of address some of the livability issues, but also create places where people want to spend time and have community. Folks were talking about interests in home ownership programs, which the Housing Bureau provides, including home repair loans and grants to folks to be able to, fix the housing that we currently have instead of necessarily building. I mean, we will be building more, right? But also making sure that we're not losing housing while we're building more, and giving folks opportunities to own homes when possible. Folks are really, really interested in, I think, what is really relevant to you all, and infrastructure and transit investments in the area. Again, sidewalks, crosswalks. Folks really want, pedestrian safety, bike safety. We heard a lot about that, and I think that was a big concern for folks. And then I think the other two major concerns, I know I'm jumping around on the slide here, but the sort of larger underdeveloped sites, the big lots, and the places that have a lot of potential, investing in those to develop more business opportunities. And then also lastly, addressing sort of the heat island issues with the tree canopy, like ensuring that the trees that are being planted are being taken care of. And we know that there's a lot of concerns about environmental justice across 82nd, and we've seen sort of in the heat waves that have become unfortunately more common, that the tree canopy has an enormous impact on people's safety and well-being. So it's not just about sort of aesthetics, but also just like health and well-being. So the investments, like I said, get split up among different pots of money. And the difference between the 82nd Avenue district and some of the other districts is that there was interest in investing a bit more into infrastructure. And the folks on the working group and the steering committees, I think, were really like mindful of making sure that came out of sort of the bucket of 55% rather than the 45%, which is the minority stake. And these are some of the things that, can happen. And unfortunately, our colleague from Prosper had a family emergency and couldn't attend tonight, so she's much more knowledgeable on the economic development side of things. But like I was mentioning earlier, the affordable housing opportunities can absolutely look like big multi-unit investments, but they can also look like rehabilitation for existing units, preservation of existing affordable housing, home ownership opportunities. It can look like safe rest villages. It can look like, manufactured home parks. It really depends on what the community decides among these sort of investment priorities are the things that they want to fund in their neighborhoods, in their TIF district, rather. And so that brings me into a beautifully planned segue about the community leadership committees, or the CLCs, as you'll hear them referred to as. These districts in the east side of Portland are decided to follow what we refer to as the Cully model. So in Cully, their recently adopted TIF district in 2022 created a community-based sort of TIF governance, which is pretty unique and pretty new. But the idea being that, community would have a much larger say in what investments were in their TIF districts. And this really came from community-based organizations, Living Cully, Verde Hacienda, just to name a few. And sort of they came up with this idea to do the CLCs. And so the East District Working Groups and Steering Committee decided to move forward with this as a model. And the way it works is we have 13 members selected by both Prosper Portland and PHB. Folks apply, we go through a process, and then those folks go to a 2-hour meeting once a month for the first 2 years or so, first 2 years, while they develop the action plan, and then eventually they'll sort of meet quarterly. But these folks would be representing interests of vulnerable communities, be working to make sure that investments that are coming in are supporting stabilization, and that TIF is being used for that purpose rather as a tool than a tool of displacement, and that they really reflect sort of the neighborhoods that they are based in, right? So they have folks of diverse backgrounds and experience, folks from business associations, but also folks from community-based organizations or just folks off the street. And the folks that we're looking for, we're currently doing recruitment for these positions. The folks that we're really looking for are anybody who spends time, works, worships, have children in school, used to live in, or hangs out in 82nd for whatever reason. Ideally, we want to have like strong connections to the area because these folks are making decisions that impact that. But if you have any sort of connection to 82nd, it's a very loose sort of definition, as long as it's a strong connection, right? And so we're going to be recruiting for those folks. We have applications that are coming out very soon, I believe. I'm looking to Misha here to confirm that. I believe we're launching them next week. Is that right? Or
Hopefully
TBD.
by
TBD.
the end of this week.
Okay.
We're just waiting for the translated materials to come back, which should be back tomorrow. But if all else fails, yes, early next week, we'll be launching the application for the 3 East Portland TIF, East Portland community leadership committees.
Yeah, thanks. Go ahead. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, yeah, the application will be open for a month.
Thank you. And I think I actually, sorry to interrupt you, Misha. I just really forgot to mention, sort of, if I go back a couple slides here. So obviously we're thinking that the majority of folks would be relevantly talking about 82nd, but if folks work or spend time in the 2 other districts, Sumner, Park Rose, Argay, Columbia Corridor, or Space, and east of 205 are the 2 other districts, and they cover just a really large area. So if you're interested in any of the districts, you're welcome to apply, but we obviously think that most folks here would be interested in the 82nd Avenue district. And then the rest of the presentation is really about action planning, which I'm happy to talk about, but I feel like I've given a lot of information so far, and I want to do a quick time check. How much time do I have left, Machu? I also want to make sure that I have time for questions. So why don't we do this? I will just really briefly talk about what an action plan is. I'm not going to go into the weeds on it, but basically the action plan is the menu, and it is a council approved menu that forms a strategy for implementation of the TIF program. For the first 5 years, funds aren't really sort of out the door because they need to sort of accumulate to be significant enough to be used. But there is still sort of a planning period that happens, and these TIF districts last for about 30 years, depending on a number of factors. But the action plan is a principal charge of what the CLC will be doing, is developing that. And then that will go sort of to council, they'll approve it, and then we come back every 5 years to do that. So I think that actually might be, that might be it. So we would love it if folks, are interested to hear more. Feel free to contact us. We can put you on our email list. And then we would love folks to apply. And I am happy to answer any questions that folks might have.
And Raul, before we start taking questions, I just wanted to add regarding the CLCs. So like Raul said, you'd be meeting, if you were interested in applying and get appointed to serve on one of the CLCs, there would be the expectation of a 2-hour meeting per month And dependent upon like the city's needs and what the chair also feels of the committee, there might be a request to meet more frequently, just depending when we're in the process of adopting the inaugural action plan, first action plan for these 3 East Portland TIF districts. And then thereafter, after the action plan is adopted by council, we would be meeting on more of a like quarterly basis to touch base on how things are going. Are we implementing the action plan, looking at data reports and so forth?
Thanks, Misha.
Absolutely.
Okay. Do folks have questions about TIF broadly, about the CLC? Yes.
Yeah, looks like a question from Ross.
Yeah, just I guess, what's the precedence for TIF districts within Portland, and what are some existing or historic districts, and what are some, I guess, positive outcomes of TIFs in other areas? Thanks.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think historically, TIF has had kind of a mixed record. I think there is, I think I touched on it a little bit, but there were definitely, it was also known as urban renewal. So it's possible that you've heard of that term also. And it has absolutely been used for sort of nefarious purposes to displace folks. And we're seeing, I mean, it's still pretty early, but we're seeing the possibilities of the work that can happen at the community-based level in Cully. And we've had TIF districts, I believe, for the last 60 years in the city of Portland. Maybe longer. I'm going to double check that here in a second. And the affordable housing set aside has been around, oh my gosh, why don't I have this off the top of my head? I believe 2006 is when it started. And so that set aside allocates those dollars to affordable housing. And since at least then, there has been really thoughtful community-based pressure on both the Housing Bureau and Prosper Portland to invest these dollars in a way that's more consistent with sort of community values and getting folks opportunities and not displacing them. So I don't know if that answers your question.
I think so. Yeah, appreciate it.
Yeah.
Terry, go for it.
As I said, I was at a city council committee meeting this morning, and it was PBOT, and they were giving a report. And I don't remember the exact figure, but they're in a big hole as far as money-wise. And they're also under court order to ADA a lot of the intersections, the corners. And my question is are you able to use some TIF money to offset PBOT's cost for doing this, which will allow PBOT to be maybe a little bit less of in the hole, if you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, totally.
Do you understand what I'm trying to say here?
Totally.
Can this money be used for for some of this court-ordered ADA corner intersections where ramps? That's what I'm trying to think of.
Yeah.
That would relieve PBOT from taking some of it out of their budget to do the same, because there's a certain amount that they have to put in every year, I think until 2030, I believe it is.
Yeah. So great question. Yes is the short answer. The longer answer is it depends on what folks list as priorities. So, and also what council approves, right? So folks who will come up with this action plan, these sort of the outline in the TIF approved plan that went through council in November, folks in the community could say, we actually want to spend 100%, right? And it's likely that it's not this simple, right? But they could say, like, we want to spend 100% of this money on fixing roads and sidewalks. And then council could weigh in and say, actually, no, we want to spend X number of percentage on this or that, right? So it does need to go through a process, but the funds are allowed to be used for construction of sort of any sort of physical improvements. So that includes, curb cuts, that includes other physical infrastructure that would be required to be in compliance. I think one of the main concerns of folks in the working groups was that they didn't want to have TIF just be like a place where bureaus who are embattled, because frankly the whole city is embattled in terms of finances, where folks would just look to like, we're going to take this neighborhood's sort of money that they've invested and use it and not invest anything else. I think the idea would be to make it more attractive by having matching funds, but not have it be like a replacement, right? And so that's the conversation that happened. And I think, Jacob, I don't want to put you on the spot, but if you, because I know you were part of that conversation, if you want to add anything, if you feel like I missed anything there, feel free.
No, you got it. We put in some conceptual caps in terms of how much we would spend on infrastructure costs, particularly because we wanted to have certain things accomplished with the TIF dollars outside of the general city budget, particularly in East Portland, where we feel like a lot of people were expressing that the city promised during annexation that sidewalks and curbs and general improvements would be part of the annexation process. Was never delivered, and then they're concerned that once their opportunity to come participate in TIF dollars, that the city would come in and use that to backfill on promises and not deliver the benefits that other districts get out of TIF money.
Does that answer your question, Terry? Thank you, Jacob.
I think it does. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. All right. Any other questions? And Misha, feel free to answer also. I'm just jumping in here.
And just in case people aren't reading the chat, Raul shared that the first TIF district was 1958 in Portland.
Thank you.
But the downtown?
I believe, I don't actually know. I think they may have been Portland State. Yep. And then again, some of the more like not good ones. The Albina Neighborhood Improvement Plan and the Emmanuel Hospital, which I think displaced a lot of people. And I think those lessons, I think, are really at the forefront of what's happening right now, both at the Housing Bureau and Prosper. So. And then Misha also, thank you for pointing out that folks might not be reading the chat. Misha also put in a timeline of TIF districts, the most recent ones that were active, and there's several that have concluded recently and that were started in the 1980s. So these are like really long-term sort of projects. And the four that are sunsetting currently are in Central East Side, Interstate, the Willamette District, and Lentz. But there are some new TIF districts that are being proposed that are in either in close proximity or have some overlap with previous TIF districts in the central city. Okay, I feel like I gave a lot of information there. I will put my email in the chat if any folks have any questions that come up, and then
I have a question. I can't figure out how to raise my hand.
Oh, no worries. Go ahead, Lisa.
So the TIF districts, who decides what the TIF districts are? And this is based on property taxes, is that correct?
Yeah. So great questions. I'll answer the first part, and then Misha, I'll let you answer the second part. Does that sound good? So the TIF districts, the boundaries, is that what you're referring to? Like the size of them and where they are, et cetera?
And who decides what a TIF district is?
Yeah, so the short answer is council. The longer answer is this last year, we got a lot of community input from different folks, different community organizations. There's a year-long process of community engagement that got a lot of feedback from lots of different stakeholders, business groups, community groups, neighborhood associations, people off the street. And we took that feedback, did a report, gave it to council. Working groups worked on the borders of these districts, so community-based or community folks, community volunteers on these working groups. And then council approved them. So that's who decides. Does that answer that part of the question?
Yeah. So who decides when the property taxes are raised to compensate for the lack of funds?
Do you want to answer that? Make sure you want me to.
Oh, it kind of broke up a little. Which what
Sorry.
was the, yeah.
Sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yep, I can hear you.
Okay. Who decides when the property taxes in those TIF districts are raised to compensate for the lack of funds?
So, as far as like the funding in a TIF district, it is it's based on property taxes, but your taxes aren't, it's not a new tax, and your taxes aren't necessarily getting raised. It's, like, you know, historically your taxes will increase, and it's just that amount that it increases gets funneled into a separate pot that instead of it going back into the general fund, the excess is distributed amongst that TIF district. So like Raul just pulled up this PowerPoint right here. So the frozen base, right, this grayish bar is, we'll say your taxes, your assessed value annually. Once you're in a TIF district, we're freezing the amount, like we're freezing the assessed value of your taxes at the time the TIF district is approved. That amount is still going to get pushed into the general fund for school districts and you know, and things like that. And then any increase that occurs,
Sorry.
would go into, would be tax increment proceeds. That is the amount, sorry, that bucket right there is what is used to spur economic development, infrastructure, and affordable housing in the TIF district. And then if we go over a certain amount, you see this like light blue where it says dollars to taxing jurisdiction. If you receive too much in tax funds, you've got to put it back in the general fund. And then after the TIF district closes, then all of the taxes, like the foregone taxes in essence, return back to the general pot, if that makes sense. And Raul, you could feel free to clean that up.
Yeah.
So it's frozen at the time the TIF district is established.
Mm-hmm.
So you can only take however much out of that year's property taxes for this program, and then the years following, but this is up to 30 years, is that correct?
Yeah. So it's a extreme, I feel like it's a very confusing and kind of strange little financing instrument. And so I think this might be a helpful way to explain it. This is an analogy that I use. It's not perfect, right? But bear with me. So let's say you have a job that you know you will get a 3% raise every year, right? Like, amazing job, right? Great news that you have a job like that. You have that job and you have an existing bank account that you put in all of your money that you use for your monthly expenses. What TIF is if you created a separate account and you put that 3% increase every year, which is what we expect, just naturally occurring increases in property value. You put that 3% aside into that separate account, and that account you use for, repairing your roof or fixing your plumbing or whatever, right? It takes a little while to build up enough resources to get money in there, but that separate account is sort of how TIF functions, right? And the way it works is it's on assessed value. So every time that a property is sold and sort of reassessed is when the increases would be taken into account, right? So it happens sort of naturally, and over time the average sort of goes up. But then if it hits a threshold, if it goes up too much, right? Like if we suddenly realize that, everybody got their houses reassessed and their property taxes all went up, and TIF is getting loads and loads of money, that excess goes back into what it would have gone to anyway. And then at the end of the 30 years, the district closes and all of it goes back. So that's what we call returning TIF. And all of those districts that we were talking about earlier, sort of the ones that are sunsetting, all of those resources are coming back into the general fund. And that's why there's an acreage cap at the state, is they don't want too much of the city to be in a TIF district, because then it would be really hard to fund basic services, right? And so the idea is different parts of the city get this sort of financing tool to spur investment and improve those areas. And it's effectively like an interest-based account that is financing this stuff. Did that make sense?
That was a perfect analogy. Thank you.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. Great.
Terry, you've had your hand raised.
Yeah, yes. I don't know if you're familiar with Milepost 5, which is a former artist colony or whatever that's now low-income housing. And it's more like a room, and the bathroom's down the hall. But the operator, the management of that, has let the building fall into total disrepair, from what I understand. It's infested. The bathrooms are broken. There's security issues. Would TIF dollars, they're not living up to their contract, let's put it that way. Would TIF dollars make some improvements to that building, and what would it require if TIF dollars did make improvements to that low-income living facility?
Totally. So when we talk about affordable housing preservation, that is exactly what we're referring to, right? Is repairing existing affordable housing stock. Because a lot of the times, what happens is there's sort of limited funding that's put up by either the city or the federal government, or philanthropy. Whoever puts up the money does so, and then the affordable housing developer or property manager is sort of on the hook long term for maintenance. And sometimes it's through neglect or malfeasance, but a lot of the times it's just sort of a lack of resources that ends up happening, that these places don't get the repairs that they need or want, right? And so the TIF can absolutely be used to do sort of physical improvements. And it could potentially pay for security gates or that sort of thing in a building. It could not hire a security guard, right? Because again, it has to be physical improvements. So there are limits to what it can be used for, but in theory, yes. And I don't know, I looked up the property you mentioned. I'm not super familiar with it, but I do think it is in the district. I think it's in Montevilla, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, it is. It's between Halsey and Gleason, I believe. Yeah, across from Montevilla Park.
I'm pretty sure that is in the district. But yeah, I mean, I think the idea is giving some of these places, either larger affordable housing buildings, or individual homeowners who are low income.
Well, would it require a change in management? Because the feeling is right now is that the management is not keeping up with what is in the management's contract to do.
Yeah. I'm not super familiar with that specific building, and I don't know is the short answer. It could be there's lots of reasons that could be happening. Like I said, it could be again, it could be neglect, which we see sometimes. It could be malfeasance. It could just be like, it could be just a lack of resources. And if it is a lack of resources and there are resources available, then it seems like a pretty straightforward fix. But oftentimes it's more complicated than that. And so I can't speak to that specific building. But heard, right, that is a concern that you have for sure.
Thank you.
Yeah.
If I could ask something, one thing I've been hearing from like youth along these districts, I heard a concern about the effect of tax increment financing on school district funds, given just the state of, everything really. But like you said, all levels of government, but
Yeah.
concern around funding underfunded schools. How does this, if there is any like policy, or how's Oregon or City of Portland navigate that impact to school district revenue from TIF districts?
That's a really, really great question. And when I say we, I mean Prosper and PHB and community, the working groups and steering committee. We had folks from school districts. I believe the Space District had folks from the Park Rose School District, and there were folks who were meeting with David Douglas, meeting with PPS, meeting with other school districts to see what sort of impact this would have on their resources. And what we heard from at least a couple of them is that it would be relatively minimal, that there would be like a little bit less. But, we're talking about a percentage point difference because of the way that the state calculates school funding. It's by a per student basis. It's called the state school fund. And I'm not an expert on this, so please, if there are folks who understand this more than I do, feel free to chime in. But the state school fund reimburses schools or gives them funding at the state level based on how many students they have, rather than the regional property taxes that are being generated. And so in that case, if there are, right, it's very possible and likely that there would be, sort of a minimal or small impact on school funding in those districts that are that have schools in those TIF districts. But if those improvements bring more students in, it's possible that they get more resources, right? Or if it makes, there's like other benefits that were discussed with those districts, and folks kind of were like, well, yeah, if there's affordable housing for our students, that's great. If there's safer sidewalks for our students, that's great. There's things that we can't, sort of invest in as a school that are outside of our control that would be really great. And so we had generally positive conversations with those districts where they were like, yes, this would be sort of a net positive for our students.
I know that's just been a big concern from every school I've heard along A2nd. It's like declining enrollment and that impact, and how do you increase the housing like you just suggested near the proximate to those schools.
Yeah,
Bill.
Totally.
Yes, Bill.
Hi, I have a question about the community leadership committees. One thing about 82nd is it covers such a lengthy geography, and I was wondering if efforts are going to be made to ensure that there's representation from the various areas along it. You have Brentwood, Darlington in the south, and the J District, and then Montevilla and Madison South, and they each have their own little commercial hubs. And I'm just curious if there will be efforts to make sure there's some of that geographic representation. And I did want to just note one thing in terms of community interest in some of these things happening. Within the last couple of years, we had finished up a plan for the Brentwood Darlington area, and including establishing a new designated neighborhood center. And people were actually advocating for a TIF district there because they really wanted investments in community economic development and making sure that some of the housing that's going in there is affordable to people and their children so they could stay in the area. But yeah, just curious about the geographic representation, especially since you're looking for new recruits.
For sure. Misha, do you want to handle this one since you're the point person for 82nd?
Yeah, thank you for the question, Bill. I would definitely say, you know, speaking for myself and I guess colleagues at Prosper, and we want a diverse group of individuals that are going to work alongside the city of Portland and also Prosper Portland, and to make sure that the CLC embodies the community. So it is really important to have representation from various different neighborhoods on the CLC. One of the questions, without, I guess, divulging too much information since the application's not live yet, there will be opportunity to link what neighborhood you're a representative of, something like that, within the application, so we can see like where different parts of like 82nd folks are coming from, because we don't want like over concentration in one area and then that to not you know, represent. I mean, it's a large stretch, so yeah, definitely we will be looking at that when making our recommendations, and this does have to get approved by council. The 13 folks do need to get approved by council, so that's something that, you know, we're pretty sure they're going to want to see as well, that the committee represents the community geographically across the corridor.
Okay, thanks.
And just one other thing I've been hearing conversations out in the community is like around the Lentz Town Center. I've been hearing about like some of the new developments gone in and concerns from like local entrepreneurs and small business owners about the high costs to rent those new developments. So it might be a little more of a question for like Prosper, but like what kind of support can we do as we activate storefronts and develop lots to make sure that they're accessible to the communities they're serving and don't sit vacant?
Yeah, I don't think I don't think I'm gonna pretend to know Prosper's portfolio work. And so I will unfortunately
Okay,
have you ask that question to Catherine, unfortunately. Sorry.
sure thing.
Really mainly on the housing. I can tell you about the exploration process, but I don't know much more beyond that. I know they do incubation programs. I know they do small business loans. I know they do sort of, you know, storefront development and revitalization, but I don't know the details of that stuff. So that is a really great question.
Yeah, if I guess if anyone has a final question, I don't want to hold you all from the last minutes of the sunset here. All right, well, thank you so much. Really appreciate taking the time to come out. I know you all come out last year to give an update on the formation of the TIFs, and so appreciate the follow-up on the formation of the CLCs. And as noted, the application sounds like it'll go live within the week. And so if this is interest of you, please apply.
Yeah, and we'll definitely send that out. There'll be like a big sort of broader email blast, but I'll put my email here in the chat if folks have any questions, and we can communicate through you, Machu, if that's easy. Also, thank you for having us.
Yes, thank you for having us. And yeah, Raul dropped his email. I will also drop my email if you have questions. But like Machu said, if you are interested in applying, we definitely encourage you to apply to sit on one of the CLCs. If you know folks that should apply, please encourage them to apply. We'll have that application open for at least a week, or excuse me, at least a month, to try to get as much you know, as much participation during the application process as possible. And then Catherine from Prosper, I'm assuming you all have met Catherine previously, will be out in the community canvassing in the next couple of weeks. And then we'll have some office hours in district. So more to come on that once locations and things are finalized. But thank you.
Thanks so much.
Great
And-
meeting. Thank you. This was excellent. And thank you for your emails.
Of course. Have a good evening, everybody.
Have a good evening.
Thank you. Bye.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Have a good night. Just follow up with any questions and enjoy the evening.
You too. Thanks.